Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, this is the 5th day in our retreat. Now we are going to take time for the 5th talk in this series. May everyone get settled down and give the consent with 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. So sunyatha mitang sanyagatang aranya sanyayati pajanati. Sunyatha midang patavi sanyayati pajanati akasananchayatana sanyayam paticca ekattanti pajanati ti. Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, before this retreat we have taken a particular discourse delivered by the Buddha named as Chula Sunyatha Sutta, upon which we are based upon which we are having a series of discourses day by day. As the particular sutta expands, we take one by one topics according to the day's talks. The main topic, the main naming this sutta is after Chula Sunyatha Sutta. That means understanding the voidness. So it appears something philosophical, very inferential as far as the day-to-day activities are concerned, because often we are not using this in our day-to-day jargon. So therefore it needs base or background, how this term or this topic came into being, so that the Buddha has to deliver a discourse. The case was one day Venerable Ananda, the chief attendant, around the Buddha, and he reminds the Buddha, Venerable Sir, I remember while you were in Sakya Janapada, that is your hometown, you mentioned that often I abide by this voidness. Am I correct in taking this idea? Have I remembered this properly? Have I digested properly? Have I reproduced to you the same as you meant? Then the Buddha says, yes, Ananda, I mentioned to you that I was abiding by voidness while there, and you have heard it properly, remembered properly, and what you reproduce is the correct. Not only there, even now I am abiding by voidness. This is how the topic came into being. And then the Buddha, without much further inquiries from Venerable Ananda, he takes this opportunity to explain. That means that the particular topic needs so much of elucidation, explanation. And he first mentioned the here now I am. The Buddha says, Ananda, now we are living in the Savatthi, the popular place, famous place where Buddha spent most of his time, and in the eastern side there was a Pubbārāma done and offered by Upasika Visakha, Migaramātupāsāda. So as far as we are in this forest, as far as we are dwelling in this forest, we have nothing to worry about the village affairs or household affairs, namely about rearing animals or doing agricultural work or that kind of engagement. Also, we have nothing to worry about the silver, gold and the monetary aspects. Also, we have nothing to worry about the ceremonies and gatherings of the villagers, males and females. So our mind are void of distraction regarding these things. Instead, our mind is obsessed, maybe we have to be concerned about this forest life. So the forest life is the one, if at all, we have to think about. That is the only perception we are dwelling upon. So therefore, I would call the whatever it is not available at the perception level in the mind for the moment is fit to call voidness. We have the perception of voidness regarding these worldly affairs, household affairs, village affairs, but only we have distraction pertaining to the forest dwelling. And then Buddha says that in this forest monks are available and forest dwellers available and the background available. So these are the only thing we are concerned about, and they are also invariably or in an indirect way, Buddha says, if someone is taking delight in the living in the forest or take delight in forest life, then he only will successfully entertain this perception of voidness regarding the village life, household life. That means by keeping the mind on the forest life and the keeping mind on the forest dwelling, occupying the mind by the forest dwelling, you can do away with the external worries, distraction, frustration and all. And later the Buddha, if I am to quote from the Satipatthana Sutta and the other places, when and where someone goes to forest, if he wish to further develop this perception of the voidness, he can take sitting posture or walking posture, and when and where someone is focusing the attention to the very sitting posture, your perception is still further confined to your body, so that as far as your perception is confined to your body, that is to say, I am here sitting, that means you are at that very moment, you are free from the distraction regarding the village thing, household things, external worldly things, and also about the perception regarding the forest dwelling. Forest dwellers, now you are concerned only your sitting posture, and your perception is occupied by this particular thing. So your worries, your distractions are still reduced with respect to that reduced amount of perception. All the others are done away with. Therefore, you are now living in a further or greater voidness regarding the distraction and the frustrations and the tensions. And this much is quite conventional and reasoning or inferentially or logically, Buddha is sharing with Venerable Ananda, communicate with Venerable Ananda, and then he says, supposing when you sit down, your attention is focusing on the body, at a given time, one of the elements of the body, theoretically there are 4 elements, air element can be more prominent than the others, or earth element may be more prominent than the others, or water element or fire element. Likewise, according to the posture, you are mindful, you are diligent, you are vigilant. If your attention is sharply focused upon the prominent, particularly prominent element at that given time, and if you well aware about that, that means you can free from your perception or distraction regarding perception pertaining to your whole body. Now you are only worrying, only your distraction is that selected single element. In sitting meditation, if you go through the canon, it says if you are happy to take this mindfulness on the in-breath and out-breath, that means you are dwelling upon the air element, expansion, contraction, holding capacity, stiffness, tension, movements. In the walking meditation, you often pay attention to the earth element, the roughness, softness of the earth or your soul, whatever may be the earth element. So each and every posture, each and every given thought moment, only one element is prominent at a time, and that very prominent element is dominating all the other three. So therefore at that time your mindfulness will pick only what is prominent, and if you aware within the body, this is the particular element that I am focused with, your frustration, your distractions, your attention is now limited not to the whole four elements, but to the selected conspicuous prominent element. So therefore you are free from the external world or forest dwelling or so to say your body, but you know only the air element or earth element. And then we are coming to the serious intensive meditation or residential meditation, and suppose we keep on practicing like this. We have already gone into the forest, we have assumed sitting posture or walking posture, and then and there our mind is very sharp, very directed, adverted only to that particular element, and you very well aware. You are very vigilant. My mind is dwelling for the moment on this particular element. That means you can make a statement, Sunyatha midan sanyāgatang aranya sanyāyāti pajanāti. He is verily knows now mind is void of perception of the forest dwelling, void of perception of the beings. Instead, my mind is only have, if at all there are any distraction, it is due to the earth element or due to the air element, and that very distraction we call contact and interaction. Then that you are aware of. Not only that you are aware of, you have the shape of the air element, the manner of the air element, beginning, the middle and the end of the air element. You know this air element not due to that is very pleasurable. It is not appealing. But this is the one conspicuous because due to your attention to the air element, you can get rid of so much of frustration. So therefore you make use this air element as a pivotal or pivot or as a benchmark or reference point, and more you plunge into, more and more you become immediate, more and more you become vigilant, mindful on the air element. More when your mind becomes seasoned, when your mind becomes face to face with this one, that means longer time keeping the in-breath and out-breath in face to face, inferential knowledge again and again will reconfirm, I am free from the distraction from the forest dwelling or external thing or any other thing, but I am with the air element. So this much, of course, as I mentioned yesterday, you can deduce inferentially, you can rationally or you can philosophizing. By philosophizing you can understand it. But if you are not a meditator, the furtherance of this particular discourse will be bewildering or mystic. But if you are, of course, a serious meditator and accumulate so much of information with respect to the air element, if that is the prominent one, or the earth element, if that is the prominent one, not only that you can understand the natural characteristics of the air element, more and more familiarization give you the chronological changes of the air element along the time. So that is the point where you are exposed to yet another aspect of the air element. That means it has the stiffness, tension, expansion, contraction. Whenever you start interaction with the air element, maybe at that time mindfulness is not mature enough, mindfulness is not consistent enough, not steadfast. But if you keep on observing, there's changes, there are some metamorphic changes or evolution with respect to the air element. And if you keep continuous mindfulness, steadfast mindfulness, it changes. Some changes are taking place with respect to the time, chronologically. If I am to quote Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says, Dighang vasa santo dighang asasamiti pajanati, dighang va passasanto dighang passasamiti pajanati. Whenever you breathe long, gross, you know now I am in breath. My in-breath is long, my out-breath is long. And if you keep on practicing with the in-breath and out-breath as much as possible, later, gradually, the in-breath becomes shorter, out-breath becomes shorter. Rassang va asasanto, rassang asasamiti pajanati, rassang va passasanto, rassang passachamiti pajanati. So that means, at the beginning, you see the longness of in-breath and out-breath. In that sense, we can say, you see the comparison between the in-breath versus out-breath. But when you keep on practicing with your own experience, now you can say the comparison between in-breath versus in-breath, out-breath versus out-breath. It is yet another dimension. That is, early one was difference between the in-breath and out-breath. Now, chronological changes of the in-breath versus early in-breaths. So that is how the mindfulness becomes very productive, versatile, steadfast. So the very particular person who is practicing, more and more he or she practice, if she is communicating with others, for example in the interviews, can give more and more facets, more and more details, some juicy details of the in-breath and out-breath. It is quite encouraging, even though it is not give any fame, gain, money or anything. This is under your very nose. This chronological change has a universal pattern. And more you practice, you bound to see your similarity with other yogis increases. At the beginning you find you are a specific yogi, you need this and that specific conditions and kind of thing. That you have to understand. That is sympathy. You have to sympathize because your mind is not much mature enough. Your mindfulness is not steadfast. But more and more you go familiarize one element. We have taken this air element as an example, and that is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. We call the element or the perception of the element become subtler and subtler. This subtlety demands more and more mindfulness. Otherwise, the monotony, sleepiness, uncertainty, fearfulness, entertaining doubts can creep in. So therefore, they are not only that you must be ready with more and more energy, ready with steadfast mindfulness, you must have theoretical understanding too. Otherwise, you can't facilitate this progress. So this is how your own experience, your own theoretical understanding, your own energy, your own methodology, means and ways, you are reinvesting again and again. While this reinvesting happens, instead of any other object of meditation, the breath as a character, it is becoming subtler and subtler and subtler. More you become immediate, more you become close to the object, more it becomes subtle. That means kind of a friendship, kind of a close association. When it is happening, the subtlety happens, and ultimately the breath and the noting mind become so face to face. Yet another aspect of the breath, that is to say, the beginning, the middle and the end of a single breath, in breath, beginning, the middle and the end of the out breath also become prominent. Some kind of ambiguity and the contradiction is there. Rationally you may think it is easier to see the beginning, the middle and the end while it is gross. But in fact, in actuality, what is happening is you can see the beginning, the middle and the end only once the breath becomes docile, once the breath becomes subtle, breath becomes immediate, breath becomes friendly. So therefore you must understand how to extract these characteristics of the breath as and when the association with the object and the mind, seasoning and closeness, and using your ways and means, slowly you are bound to see so much of new things, new facets. And this is like a physics. More and more if you associate one element, you can come to know whether it is a conductor or whether it is a non-conductor, whether it is a gas or solid or liquid. And when the heat element come into that, what will happen to the solid, whether it will transfer into the gas or directly into the gas or liquid into glass, all the kind of thing you study. So therefore, what the physics doing as well as what the yogi is doing, exactly the same at the early part with respect to the air element. But of course in this Chula Sunyatha Sutta, the particular sutta we have taken, the Buddha take earth element, and more you familiarize earth element or the air element that we have taken as an example, more you become immediate with the object. Earlier, at the beginning, object becomes solid, unit, it shows its individual intrinsic characteristics. But when and where you become very immediate and face to face with the object, ultimately you can see through the object. That seeing through, shifting our paradigm, and more you see through, you find instead of the materiality or instead of the concrete nature, it's just a piece of dust. In between particles, huge space is there. Examples cited by Burmese masters are, in the dawn or in the dusk, if you are walking in a shady footpath, whenever you see something across the road, you may suspect it as a serpent, or as a root, or as something vine, or something like that. And at a distance you find there's something across the road. So if you have a searchlight or torchlight, and if you go closer and observe it, you may find it is not a dead one, it is some kind of a movement, but it is not attributable to a serpent, not something dead like a wire or root or vine, And if you, with the confidence, if you go, you may see it's an ant, line of ants. One by one it is passing. And there is no root there. There is no serpent. But ant after ant passing, it's a huge dynamic function is there. And at a distance you misunderstand, misperceive it as something solid, dead, consistent. But when you go closer and closer, you find a lot of space in between ants, and huge dynamism is there. This is what happens when you keep on observing the same thing. For example, breathing, in-breath and out-breath, or walking, left leg and the right leg. More and more you go there, instead of recognizing with its intrinsic personal characteristics, when and where your mindful become seasoned, steadfast, you bound to see through it. When you are seeing through, the materiality part of the very phenomena become less and less. The space in between area increase gradually. This is what happens in the physics as a subject, as well as when you are developing your mindfulness as a telescope, as a microscope. More and more you become sharp. You are bound to see the space, endless space. There are some particles. That particles are moving according to their own manner, and when and where you see this space, and if you are ready enough, if you are bold enough to observe it continuously, ultimately the Buddha, of course, he is asking our seconding of the idea. Ultimately you bound to unperceive the very object, and you slowly bound to feel the space. And that is what in the question and answer sessions and in the common interviews yogis are reporting. Ultimately the very breath become unperceivable, and mind is appear like in a space, and verily that particular yogi can verify, I am not dead, I am not sleepy, mindfulness is steadfast. Even though there is no tangible object, even though there is no sign, even though there is no reference point, but the mindfulness still continuous and steadfast. And of course, this is the only mindfulness worth calling steadfast. As far as the object is there, mindfulness is dependent on the materiality. Now it is so sharp, so skillful, so seasoned. It continues without any kind of a reference point, pivotal point, benchmark, sign, object. And when it's happening, now you can understand when such a thing happen, when materiality is just dissolved into this immateriality, you are verily dwelling upon the voidness regarding the worldly matters, or distraction from the worldly matters, distraction from your dwelling place, monastery, or distraction from your body, or the distraction from your breath. Now you are verily knows the breath becomes so light, so unperceivable, mind entertain huge space. It is a frictionless path, and if you go prepared, it appear like a comfort zone or no distractions. And that whenever it come up to that level, it's a kind of a real change in your meditation as well as your perspective towards the materiality. So when and where such little changes are happening, the Buddha is reviewing the situation, revalue the situation, so that not only the Buddha, not only the Venerable Ananda, the particular yogi himself or herself can understand what is happening. But this is not true as far as you are a amateur or beginner. You get amused sometimes or get bewildered sometimes. Most of the time what happens is you entertain doubts as and when the object becomes subtle. Instead of understanding that mindfulness is continuing with the subtle object or no object, you may suspect, my mindfulness disappeared, my concentration scattered off, therefore what should I do? So therefore that kind of the entertaining of doubts appear like wisdom, appear like your inquiring mind, appear like the noble quest. But if you know from gross to the subtlety, subtly to the subtlest, you yourself can verify, tomorrow also I can put into practice and exactly the same thing happen. So therefore, instead of entertaining doubt, what about developing confidence and keep on continuing like your past experiences and mistakes are really valuable and you have to make use them again and again, then only you become independent of the Buddha, independent of Dhamma, independent of the outsiders. You are reinvesting. So therefore, at that level, the Buddha says that particular person comes to know, now the field of perception is void of the perception of forest. My field of perception is now void of perception of the body. My field of perception is now void of the earth element or air element. Instead, atiche vidang sunyatang yadidang akasanan chayatana sanyaya paticca ekattang. I have something to dwell upon that is just mere space, and upon which now mind is dwelling. If at all any distraction, if at all any frustration, if at all any tension is now based upon this space. So this comparison, what is not available and what is available, and here even though it is recognized as a perception, it becomes synonymous with frustration. Any perception is a frustration. Whatever you perceive is the one immediately become raw material for frustration. So therefore the Buddha slowly he take certain amount of perception and reduce it in terms of materiality, and few points he is pinpointing. Even the materiality becomes subtle and subtle. Mindfulness never get disturbed if you have your own confidence, if you know how to verify it. The second thing is, more and more the materiality become space-like or more subtler, your mental tension correspondingly reducing. And the third one is, for this mental tension based upon this perception of the matter, maybe other things, or coming into the area where mind is more spacious, more in the comfort zone, more in the least frictional path, you are the only person responsible for that. There's no second factor, there's no external thing. If you know the art, if you know the methodology, so you develop kind of a confidence. If I wish to have more and more frustration, more and more tension, you have to based upon your thinking, based upon your likings and disliking, based upon your personality on the materiality, more and more gross materiality. Instead, if you wish to have a light or livelihood or lightness in the mind, or lack of little or lesser amount of frustration or lesser amount of tension, your perception or you're dependent on the materiality, it must be less and less. So each and every time it has to be reinforced Each and every time it has to be galvanized with this inferential knowledge, otherwise your progress will not be steady. That is why for each and every step, you must have your theoretical understanding, you must have your own experience, and you must have the preparedness for the further subtlety, and you must have, on the first place, the suffering nature of the world. Otherwise you will never come to this experiment, because it won't give any money, no fame, no gain. But if you have any initial understanding about the suffering nature of, then you will understand the answer is under your very nose. But it is not a simple task, it's a great systematic way, and removal of the frustration also happening in a slow manner, steady manner. And if you put to the other way, when and where you to develop frustration, when and where you become a panic, when and where you become disheartened, disappointment, that is also happening exactly in the same way. The Buddha says, first and foremost, for you to have that kind of a personality, the perception is the stepping stone. Once the perception come into being, it has to be seasoned for long time for your mind to adopt into this kind of a perception. And that mind has to be seasoned for long time, then only your view become adjusted according to that perception and the mind. Sanya, Chitta, Ditthi. So we have to understand, now we are in a wrong view with respect to the materiality. Now we are in a wrong view with respect to our emotional body, with respect to our knowledge and kind of thing. So de-learning process also has to start with the perception. And once you perceive in the correct way like this, that is why the Buddha is then and there reviewing, then and there rationalization, inferential knowledge is important, because such a big de-learning process, deconditioning, never happened by one shot. It never happened overnight. It has to happen again and again. Each and every time you have to understand how it is become reinforced, galvanized, seasoned, mastered, and more you become mastered, you will see, to come up to this kind of a misunderstanding that materiality or physical gain is the only wealth in the world. I must try my best to get the fame, gain and everything in a justifiable or unjustifiable manner, exploiting others or exploring into the nature in the bad way. These are hard, long time conditioned situation in our mind. So deconditioning, de-learning also has to happen in the perception level. That is why the Buddha says, now when and where you be familiarized with the breath, or when and where you familiarize with the earth element, take this as a pivotal point. Take that perception well established and detailed understanding, all the shapes, all the manners, all the natural characteristics. So establish the perception on that particular thing and compare it with the rest of the world, so that you can see more and more you concerned and specialized on one single little thing, your knowledge is more conducive for lack of tension, lack of frustration, and you have to really then and there appreciate, because your mind is unconcerned, undisturbed regarding the external matters. So in the worldly language it's called main thing is not to worry. But main thing is not to worry is not a part of a poem. It is something you have to do. Then and there you have to reconfirm it, and otherwise our mind is a master worrying person. It is searching reasons to be worried. We worry about the past, worry about the future, worry about other people, worry about the places. But the Buddha says all the worries depend on the perception. It is not realistic. So therefore, replace these worries or kick off these worries by another perception and dwell upon this perception. Let it dwindle off, little taper off, and more you do in a systematic way, you understand perception is replaced by perception. Gross perception is replaced by subtle perception, and once you learn the art, exactly the same way, the subtlety increases when and where you season the same thing, when and where you master the same thing, when and where you familiarize the same thing. But what is happening in the world is varietal entertainment, jumping from one object to the other, seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting. We, from the morning to evening, we are changing objects. So the Buddha says the reality, the true nature of this suffering is covered, distorted, bewildered because of these changing objects. Simply, he says, due to the changing of postures. If you keep on practicing in the same posture with the same object for longer time, the very distraction regarding the posture, very distracting regarding the very object, bound to reduce, slowly reducing. But that reduction, you have to inferentially, you have to calculate, you have to appreciate, then only you get encouraged. That is the way it is philosophizing. Of course, it's a kind of a inferential knowledge. So, Mahasi Sayadaw, when he was introducing the Satipatthana or insight meditation, he says this inferential knowledge as well as direct touch of subtle breath or direct knowledge, both of them he put under the name of insight. But the direct touch must be the leading one. Inferential knowledge must come behind and justify the same. When it is going keep on, the thinkers, learned people often put the cart before the horse. They often put the inferential knowledge forward, and immediately your direct touch, pachaka, become crippled, hindered, and then you start bragging about your meditation and expectation are increasing, and you become opportunist. Having little qualification, expect so much. Because you think, I know theory, I can deduce it, inferentially I know, therefore this must happen next. But never in the meditation, never in the insight you can predict the next moment. That very novelty, that very openness to the next moment, I call as rejuvenation. If you are expecting anything, that is I call senility. You become too old. Your senses become too dull. Instead, if you are ready for the next moment, completely open, your senses will become like a teetotaler, the toddler, just very fresh. You see the world very green, everything is ready. You are ready for anything. That means your adaptability, your capacity to fix into the situation is completely open. So therefore, inside meditation, you need both. Of course, we can say we need all the three: theoretical understanding, inferential knowledge, and the direct understanding or direct touch, pachaka. But you always must understand to keep the direct touch at the forefront and let the inferential knowledge, deductive knowledge, rational knowledge to digest what is happening, but don't put the cart before the horse. That I can put it another way. You must have a verifiability or method to verify whether it is a reality or concept. When the object becomes subtle, when your breath becomes very subtle, you get mixed up like a half dream, how much it is a reality or how much it is a concept appear like a dream world. That is the point. If you are not prepared If you have not enough theoretical understanding, you tend to entertain doubts. It's unavoidable. No one can escape it. So therefore, discussion and sharing your experience with senior meditators is the only way. Otherwise, you will, in a dream world, thinking you are overestimation or underestimation, and overestimation leading to the bragging, underestimation you will quit and go out of this the residential retreats in the night time maybe. No problem, because of that underestimation. So therefore, the sharing and the discussions somewhat do it balancing. But the thing is, in this level, specifically when a successful yogi bound to start to see the subtlety of the object, when it becomes subtle and subtle, his or her communication will be crippled. They don't know how to put into words. Because our knowledge and the understanding and the language is always extrovert, but what is happening under your very nose, you don't think as important, you don't think as worth reporting, you don't think as sharing with other person, because it is in between concept and reality. So that is why in the each and every step, Buddha says, yopanatatta avasittang hoti, tang santamitang attiti pajanati. Whatever remaining, he knows verily this much is remaining. And yamitatta nahoti, tenatang sunyatang samanupasati. What is not available, he considers the voidness. So each and every moment you keep on tearing and wearing, each and every time you know this much is void. I am not concerned, I am not disturbed, I am not worrying. This is the one I am worrying. This is the reality. That reality, the Buddha says, it is genuine because you know how it came up to this subtlety from the gross. It is happening step by step. So therefore you need not any second person to second your suggestion, because you have done it number of times. So therefore this genuine nature of the meditation you can't buy in the supermarket. You have to do yourself. And you have to based upon your own comparison with the yesterday experience, and that is how you develop the verifiability. As well as he says that the more and more you practice, that very understanding come into the avipallatthaya, undistorted. Earlier the understanding happening with gaps. Here and there are very clear and prominent, sometimes it is dark. You can't understand. But with the confidence, if you keep on practicing, ultimately it becomes consistent and undistorted. So therefore, whenever you have no complete understanding, when the mind is not satisfactory, the answer is in the discussion. And when Jnanarama, my teacher, used to say, but if you go prepared for this kind of a thing, still you can manage to keep on practicing this same way regularly, or with the noble quest is unshaken, and ultimately you will understand early part of your meditation demands so much of faith. Without that, you will be asking and entertaining doubts and making queries and endlessly. So therefore, intellectual people or learned people, when they go to meditate, they expect everything reasoning out from the second person. But the person on the faith, bear it up, repetitively apply it again, and slowly understand. Of course, support from the second person also good to have a good companion in the journey. But the thing is, the real change happen by your own repetitive application. In order to apply energy repetitively, very crucial enough, your motivation, it becomes questionable when the meditation is increasing. You motivate to see what? You are motivated to see voidness. Throughout the life, throughout the samsara, we were in accumulating and gaining materiality. Now your motivation is to see voidness. That is, it is called unhuman. The whole world is searching fame, gain, accumulation and all the kind of thing. For that you have enough motivation. You can get enough amount degrees. You can find a lot of professors. You can find a lot of departments and universities. But if someone to understand this dwelling upon the voidness, each and every professor will tell you are mad. You are eccentric. Something wrong with your psychiatry. So therefore they will write a prescription to go to a psychiatrist. This is the world. So therefore under such circumstances, if someone wish to keep on practice, they must have enormous resources to keep on motivated in this practice. So only a successful yogi can give you this role model. Instead, if you are going to discuss with unsuccessful yogi or a person without any practice or dangerously, only the person with the theory understanding, I would say you will end up with negativity. This is what happened in the traditional Buddhist circles. Many people are book weevils. They read so much of grandeur formulas and they by heart it. When a meditator comes, they will ask, did you see this? That not? No, then you are not. Please get out. But the person who has trodden in this path, they knows this is what the explained in the theory is completely different when you go into practice. So therefore they are having a companion with more experience is indispensable. Support is there. But it's a gift. You can't demand, you can't buy it, and therefore you have to keep on practicing if you have good. And that is why in the Kaggavisana Sutta, it is often 30 odd number of stanzas. Each and every stanza end up with Eko chare Kaggavisana kappo. When you are practicing to dwell upon voidness, or rather you can say towards the solitude, to the free of peace of mind, best thing is to living alone. Any second person is a friction. And after giving so much of stanzas, there's one particular stanza, it says, Sache labeta nipakan sahayang. If you are gifted enough, endowed enough, lucky enough to have a companion, then you can go with him, and then you find the friction is less. An immediate stanza says, it is very rare, very difficult to find such a companion. So therefore, don't make a discouragement telling that I don't have a good companion, but keep on practicing. That is because now we are going more towards this endless space, and endless space is usually in the conventional world recognized as a lost, recognized as a bewilderment, recognized as the hindrance, recognized as a boring, recognized as monotonous. That is why the astronauts, when they go to the space, so much of things happen. Krishnamurti one day told, I don't know how much it is factual, first the Yuri Gagarin went to the space and came back. The Russian leader took him to the Kremlin and gave a party and asked, did you see something in there? A mystical person with a long beard and white and a walking stick? Then Yuri Gagarin said, yes, yes. Then he told, now I am going to give a world trip. You must not repeat it. If you are going to repeat it, I am cancelling the world trip. So he says the world trip is better than telling the truth. So he took the world trip and he went to the Vatican and met the Pope. Pope also gave a party and asked, did you see a white person with the long hair and the long beard and kind of thing? He says, no. How can you, the misguided people can see the truth? It is true, you can't see. That's what the Pope is telling. So this is the world. Whenever you go from the having to not having, materiality to antimatter, matter to antimatter, you are mystic. So world power says, don't tell the truth. Tell the people the kindergarten lesson, but don't expose everything. That is why the present day, the multinational, international education program, all the kind of thing, try the best to keep within the materiality, keep within the consumerization, keep within the luxury, so much so, as far as you are in the consumerization, they know how to tax you. They know how to gain. But when and where you go beyond that, beyond the materiality, they lose the grip. And what they do is, they say you are mystic, they will kill you. This is what happened in the West. They kill all the wizards, had so much of knowledge, they kill, they are going against the God. So therefore, anyone claim any kind of a mystics are subject to kill. Now, after 2012, each and every person killed in such a cruelty, now reports are coming. And now existing one we call the civilization, it is barbaric. It's utter killing. So therefore, if someone wants to see the presented world and the reality in the world, one must not get confined into this materiality. One must understand the world beyond the materiality, and it is possible only for the human beings, not like scientists with the telescope and the microscope. But the Buddha says refined mindfulness itself is ready to go beyond the materiality to the non-materiality, matter to antimatter, explainable to unexplainable, egoistic idea to non-egoistic situation. But even if you touch this space in your meditation, it is just a perception. It is not a permanent one. So therefore, again you come back to the earth, or in the sense in your meditation that whenever you go to such a space, after a while a jerk happens, a gross breath happens, sound appears, pain appears, thought appears, then you completely collapse in your concentration and the mindfulness. You feel like a scattered mind and gone for 6. And again you start to scratch your hair and ask, what happens? So the Buddha says, yes, that is the way our mind, never happy to be with the space, so therefore it naturally come back to this materiality. When it happens, again the frustration comes. Again the tension happens. Again the comparison happens. Again the torturing happens. Again the burning happens. So when such a thing happens, without getting your mind distracted or distorted, if you again can carefully select your object of meditation and practice like a beginner again in the same sitting, amazing enough, after a little struggling, you start to feel the subtle breath again. And again you can go into the space. That means early perception you can reify, you can certify again for a brief period. So likewise, more and more you practice with the same object and repetitive way, incessant way, untiring way, you can understand the grossness, subtlety going to happen. If you are unaware, uneducated, unprepared, you may think the grossness is due to my lack of precepts, or grossness is due to my lack of mindfulness, grossness is due to one of my mistakes, and therefore your main thing is worry. But the answer is, main thing is not to worry. That grossness also cause and effect relationship. The subtlety also cause and effect relationship. You are just a mere observer. You have the observer states. So you have to say, when I am practicing like this, the subtlety happens. After a certain extent, with beyond my agenda, again the grossness happens. My mind make this as something to be worried, something to be distracted. But this is not what the Buddha is mentioning. He says, not in this particular sutta, in the Ananja-sappaya sutta, he says whenever you awaken to sudden shocks, thoughts, pain, sounds kind of thing, then only you can understand, now I am dwelling upon a sound, but just before that thought moment, there were no sign. There were no object. My mind was without a perception. So when and where the perception rush in, our mind makes stories, proliferation upon the perception available and easily forget about non-perception thought moment. So therefore the Buddha says you must start mantras at that moment. In order to give a fair chance, he says you must recite etam santang etam panitang yadidang upekha. That is to say, that is very nice, that is very calm. What is to say, the early thought moment of upekha or equanimity. That is the advice, or that is the guideline the Buddha is telling in order to appreciate, in order to maximize the space, endless space, because suddenly mind is gushing and rushing into object, happen due to unknown cause and effect relationship. It is not your personal mistake. It is you have to expect in the meditation, and in the Potthapada Sutta, in here also, and in the Ananja-sappaya Sutta, Buddha is telling, not to Ananda but to the other audience, when it happened, materiality and non-materiality, matter and antimatter, now in the yogic successful sittings, going to happen in alternative way. And when that happens, that way, the particular yogi verily knows, now I am in a very steadfast mindfulness, but situation is beyond the control. Often mind goes to no perception and again come back to the gross perception. When and where happens, the mind makes stories, proliferation, mental proliferation of the available story, perception, and it naturally leads to frustration, tension, torturing, burning. Never think in a rational way to maximize this space, boundless space. So therefore you have to prepare the mindset when such a matter and antimatter or no perception and the perception happen. You are lucky enough to see in this world under your very nose not only the perception in the world, you can go, you can reach non-perception, but your faculties are not sharp enough to enlighten into the non-perception. So therefore there is no direct method also. Only thing is you have to appreciate the place where non-perception, of course, excuse me for using this place, it is beyond the space and time. The non-perception place is the least amount of frustration, least amount of tension, least amount of torturing, least amount of burning. So, but we can't awake into non-perception. It calls that if you can awake into a dream, you get all the extrasensory perception, sensory perception, but when in a dream you can't awaken into the dream. Dream is such. So therefore it appears like impossible task. So but going after the akasananchayatana, that means once you start to experience the space, now Buddha is taking you kind of a trip. He says, let the mind to entertain this no perception and the perception, or perception regarding the voidness and the perception regarding the tension. Treat both in equal way. This is the secret in order to master this. Don't worry thinking that mind went from the perception to no perception. Or equally don't worry when the mind goes to the no perception that you feel like or you complain like you are falling into sleep. you fallen into the beast, you fallen into unknown. So both of them are extremes. Treat it in such a way, sit it in such a way, develop the mindfulness in such a way, be diligent in such a way, be vigilant in such a way, let the mind to go into a subtle state and again come back by its own accord. And once it come back, develop again the mindfulness as a beginner and again let the mind to go into the subtlety. Ultimately you may find there is a kind of a way out when and where mind to see this subtle no perception and the perception, both of them are relative each other. When and where no perception happen, relatively perception can come. Perception only can understand and define non-perception. Non-perception by itself can't recognize it. So it is a very tricky thing. So therefore, your notion regarding the good and the bad, availability and unavailability, friction and non-friction, matter and antimatter, for the first time you have to consider in the equal weight. That is the point, very, very in the deep layer, you have to forego your likings and disliking. You are developing kind of an unshaky mind, you are developing kind of an unwavering mind, that is called the middle path, and you see at a time, worrying mind, mind with perception, mind with thought, pain, sounds, and distracted. And once you select again the primary object and keep on practicing in a beginner's mind, again it goes to the non-perception, you can't define it. You can't understand what is happening. So now, this is a very good sign, mind is progressing. Don't be biased. Don't be choosy, either to this side or this side. That is very difficult. It is very, very subtle. And unless otherwise you touch this area in the meditation, this talk will appear like in Greek. You can't understand it. So that is why just by reading suttas, up to a certain extent is conventionally leading you towards some profundity of the or magnanimity of the understanding of the Buddha. But once and when and where you perceive it, when and where you experience it, you understand Buddha is directly have a communication with me in the hotline. It is because of your experience. If you do not have it, never you can replace with theoretical understanding or any inferential knowledge. So therefore, the very understanding, very direct touch is not under anyone's authority other than your practice. And when I started this mindfulness, my teacher told, whatever may be little experience you are gaining in the mindfulness, whatever the kind of first-hand touch you are going to get, it is permanent change in your mindset. It never can be erased. Any other thing can be erased and forgotten. But the changes in the mindfulness, evolution-wise, this is a forward journey, no returnable. There are a lot of such junctions, that means real changes are happening. Slowly it is happening. In Japanese way of presentation, they are called satori, a quick enlightenment, little enlightenment. It's a good sign that you are progressing. But tomorrow you can't repeat it. It happens at a time, and tomorrow you eagerly go after a bath and the white clothes and sit and tell that today I can go into the space and I can compare with the space and non-perception. Never. You will be utter failure. Because your very expectation itself is misleading you. That is why Suzuki, still a Japanese, he told, develop beginner's mind. Daily you must start like a beginner. Never assume what you gain. Because that seasoning, familiarization, it's a mere matter of time. Or you can replace it with your patience. So therefore Burmese saying, it says, patience will lead to Nibbana. So meanwhile, yesterday also we had a question, we can just give up and just meditate like in the no governance, long methodology, just be. Or you can be very methodological, not in breath and out breath, and keep on practicing. The one thing appear like a regimentation, other thing appear like a no governance, laissez-faire. Both of them are equally valid. You don't know which one is going to work. But only the single fact is, don't give up. Keep on practice. One day, when the constellation is good, when the lucky moment happens, thing happens. Then if you feel like teaching with others, but the whole world is in completely different other way. You can't communicate with any person because there is no parallel minds. Very rarely one person go into that. But the Buddha says, whenever such a person, whenever such a yogi gain that kind of first-hand experience, he feel like sharing it with others. Unavoidable. But the others are not prepared, others are not ready to receive it. So therefore, when the Buddha, first and foremost, once he become enlightened, he has so much of compassion or sharing idea, and he was scanning through the whole world, universe, to search a person who can share with him. He found only the Alalakala, Mudrakarama Putra, they have understood this Akasana Chayatana, understood Vijnana Chayatana, understood Akanchanyayatana, Nevasanyana Sanyayatana. Buddha told they are somewhat prepared, but unlucky enough, they have passed away. 7 days before, 3 days before. All the others are just in the sensuous sphere. Or, if I am to quote in the Sigmund Freud, sexual sphere. Buddha says sensual sphere. From morning to evening we are on the senses, on pleasure principle. And ultimately the Buddha went to the 5 assistants, co-practitioners, and he walked weeks to teach. And ultimately when he reached that group of 5 ascetics, each and everyone underestimated him. They told, Buddha is coming to us to get our assistance back. Therefore, we must not respect him. They are equal, like a peer. So you know how much strategies the Buddha had to employ in order to get a chance to tell the truth to his colleagues. No one can think. So much, it is a matter of just compassion, not the wisdom. He has the wisdom. It's a factory fresh wisdom. Factory fresh. But without compassion you can't communicate. And each time he teach, all the other refused. But repetitive application, ultimately he managed to tell them, now I am a different person. I got my wisdom. Please listen. This is what it happens like. Imagine if the Anya Kondanya, the Kondanya, is not to understand, everything go in waste. Therefore, very understanding of Venerable Kondanya is almost like the enlightenment of the Buddha. If there is no communication, no spreading, no propagation. So, in this meditation also, you feel like talking, you feel like writing books, you feel like cell phones, using cell phone telling others, but mind you, others are not in the same caliber. You are completely misunderstand and ultimately going to teach. It is like eating sour mango. Let the mango to ripe, then only it is sweet. Otherwise it is very sour. So therefore, when and where the Buddha is preaching, of course in front of Venerable Ananda, when and where you understand the subtlety of the meaning, you don't feel 2600 years of the time gap. You don't feel the thousands of miles gap there, because this knowledge is beyond the space and time. But you have to apply yourself again and again. Of course, at the beginning, the faith, repetitive application, the energy. But later, when and where you are going to gain certain amount of experience, you get lot of strands, lot of connections, and your understanding, communication will become multifacets. And if with that understanding, if you are going to read the suttas or the discourses, you feel it is just like addressing to you, and it appears with different shades of meaning than earlier. So you feel more and more closer to the Buddha, more and more closer to the Dhamma. But meanwhile, you have to keep on practicing. While practicing, this nice harmony of the theoretical understanding, inferential knowledge, and the practice. So yesterday also I tried to stress, when such a thing happens, don't try to accelerate it. Don't try to be smart to gain more and more. Understand this needs lot of time. It's a matter of time. Only the thing you are responsible is don't disturb it. Give a smooth running. And it knows its own mode. It knows its own speed. And what you have to do is facilitate it. Don't let the distraction come and disturb. So, as I mentioned yesterday, our teacher Jnanarama used to say, whenever the subtlety of the Dhamma happen, don't change your feeding habit, don't change your sleeping habit, don't change your companions, don't go to place, and try to fix these variables and let that happen, because it needs repetitive application. So when and where it happens, the Buddha says, whatever you lost, or whatever the frustration you done away with, whatever the tension you done away with, precisely you can say this much. And in order to get rid of this much of frustration, this is the pivot you use, this is the reference point you use, this is the object you use, this is the sign you use, verily you know. So each and every time that reinforcement happen, and more consideration and more practice happen, the object become more and more thin. The sign become unperceivable. But still, it is not for the first time in your life. This was the trend so far. So more and more subtlety, more and more seeing through, more and more space, you feel directly related to your lack of frustration, lack of tension. So you might find difficult to communicate with the people, complain about the emotions and the frustration and kind of thing. But only you can do is let them know the ABC, early parts. And in order to convince others on ABC, you also have to work like a beginner. So therefore the beginner's attitude or beginner's mind, it has many meanings. As far as you have a beginner's mind, you never frustrate, you never demand, you have no result orientation. When and where it happens, you have to understand very result orientation itself is a frustration, itself is a tension, itself is a torturing. Instead, many mature yogis have mentioned that it's a quality to develop the beginner's mind. And therefore you can communicate with the non-meditators, meditators, non-Buddhists, everyone, because your mind is always in the beginner's mind. But still, when and where the time permits, you keep on exploring with your all ways and means the same way, and you go there. And the next step along this sutta, the Buddha going to explain, of course, with this amount of understanding and experience, when and where the have and not have, or matter and the antimatter, positivity and negativity happens, our mind is magical enough only to highlight positivity, have, matter. Camouflage into the situation, it cover off absence, antimatter, space. So this is the first and foremost prime function of the consciousness. In order to see that, you have to see the having and not having, perception and not perception, objects and no objects. all in the equal way, then only you can see behind the game, behind the screen, how the consciousness is, separate them into two, have and have not, positive and negative, matter and antimatter, and draw your attention only to the positive side. This is how we call productivity. That is what we call creativity, but it is nothing but the magic of the mind. So I leave it for the tomorrow's analysis. Already we have taken almost 1.5 hours. So with that, I would like to sum up the today's talk. Thank you very much for listening.